Welcome to our Omid Yom Shir. We're going to have a very interesting shir today about the sins of the fathers. Yeah, when it says in the Torah that people sinned, does it really mean that they sinned, or does it mean something else? Or what's the level of the sin, etc., etc. So we have to recap from yesterday, Nun Hey Amud Aleph, and basically let's restart from Omar of Ami, which is 3 lines from bottom of the page, Nun Hey Amud Aleph. Omar of Ami, we're Maseches Shabbos, in case you don't know. So this is Shabbos Nun Hey Amud Aleph. Omar of Ami, Ein Nisa Beloy Chet, V'Nisurin Beloy Ovain. Yeah, there's no death without Chet. In other words, the only reason people die is because of their chatoim, even b'shoigeg. But if there's no Chet, a person, practically, if somebody would not sin, never sin, he wouldn't die. He wouldn't have died. When he's surin below ovoin, the person would never suffer anything real hard, physical. He's surin without an ovoin, without a even more severe chet. Ovoin is bemezid, and he proves it of Ami. En misa below chet, dichtiv v'nefesh hanefesh achoytes hitomus. The nefesh that sinned, the soul that sinned, is going to die. Ben lo yisa b'avona av lo yisa b'avona ben. The son doesn't die because of his father's sin. The father doesn't die because of the son's sin. In other words, each one gets their own. The tzaddik gets a tzidkus, the risha of the rishus, but the main, Hashem pays each one according to his deeds. But the first part of the pasuk is the proof of Rav Ami. If you sin, eventually you die. If you never ever sin, if you saw such a tzaddik, you wouldn't die. Yes, try it. You love it. That's one. Now, unless it's too late. And Yisurim below Ovoin. How do you know that Yisurim only come as a result of an Ovoin, of a more serious chet? Because it's painful. The Yisurim, Dichtiv Fakaditi B'Shevet Pisham, Ubenegoim Avoinam Fakaditi, I will punish, I will revisit in a harsh way. I will take care of them with Shevet Pisham, Ubenegoim Avoinam, their Avoinois will be treated harshly with Negoim. Now we're going to start the fun. Now comes the question about Rav Ami's statement. Basically, let's see the following brisa and see that there seems to be an issue with Rav Ami's statement. Amar Malach HaShoros Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Malach HaShoros came and said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam, mipnei ma konasta misa al Adam HaRishon? Why did you punish Adam HaRishon? Why did you fine him? Why did you punish him with Misa? Amar lehem mitzvah. So Hashem replied to them, mitzvah kal tzivisi v'over aleh. Yeah, there's only one mitzvah, a rather easy mitzvah to fulfill. Just one mitzvah, not taryag, not to eat from one fruit, and even that he transgressed, so he deserves to die. Omer lo, so Malach HaShoros told him, V'alo Moshe ve'Aaron shekimu kol haTorah kula v'meisu. According to this opinion, Moshe ve'Aaron actually fulfilled the entire Torah, and according to this opinion, they never sinned. That's also a question. So you see that they sinned, that they didn't sin, and yet they died. So he told them, Mikra echad l'tzadik v'lo shel hatoiv, etc. In other words, although according to this opinion, really Moshe and Aaron never sinned, nevertheless, Tzaddik and Rosha, at the end of the day, they get the same. They die even without any chet. Of course, the obvious question, which yesterday we're like avoiding, as we all know that Moshe and Aaron, they were choite, at least with one big chet of Mei Meriva, that, they hit the rock instead of speaking. So some Meforshim explain it's not enough of a chet. That was the reason for them to go into Eretz, not to go to Eretz Yisrael. But it's not enough of a reason to die. In other words, not every chet grants you misa. A chet of more sizable amount gets a person to go to death. Moshe and Aaron, that chet is not considered enough of a chet to actually kill them at the end of the day. Okay, but still, that doesn't work with Rav Ami. Rav Ami says real sins they get you to misa, otherwise no. Answers the Gemara, no. Rav Ami follows a different brisa. Rav Ami is an Amoiro, so he has to agree with one other Tana. Which Tana does he follow? Rav Ami follows the following Tana. The Tanya, it says in the brisa, Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Af Moshe v'Aaron b'chet hamesu. No, Moshe and Aaron died because of the chet. Shenemar, Yan lo emantem bi. because he did not believe in me, that's why you're going to die before going to Eretz Yisrael. But that's why you die bichlal. Had you not sinned to that level, you wouldn't have died. Enochinami, I amantim bi. Had you believed in me that speaking to the rock is good enough, adayin lo giaz manchin lipoter min oilom, then your time hasn't yet come to be nifter from the world. What do you mean not yet? Meaning until you sin next time, or maybe you never will. Yeah, in theory, if you never ever sin, this second brisa says Enochnami, Moshe and Aaron did sin, that's why they died. But if somebody would be completely clean, he wouldn't have died. So far, so good. One Tana says Enochinami that they bichlal, yeah, they didn't sin and they died. The other opinion says they did sin and that's why they died. Very good. And that's Rav Ami, that's good with Rav Ami. That's up until now, that's yesterday. Meisivi, here comes a brisa with a question, very famous brisa. There are 4 people in history that died be'etyoy shel nochosh. What's etyoy shel nochosh? Rashi says etyoy is like eitza. Eita in Aramaic is eitza, the advice. Because of the bad advice of the nochosh, he gave Chava very bad advice, right? And therefore, because of that, the Kadosh Baruch Hu said all human beings are supposed to die at some point. Okay, et yeshal nachosh, and that's why these 4 people who were complete tzaddikim, they did not deserve to die. They were complete tzaddikim, and yet they did die. Why did they die? Because human beings have a klala from the nachosh. Who are those big tzaddikim that, individually speaking, were not supposed to die? Veiluhen, these are the 4 tzaddikim who never sinned. Who are they? Binyamin ben Yaakov, Binyamin the son of Yaakov, the Amram of Moshe, yeah, Amram the father of Moshe, the Yishai of David, Yishai the father of David, the Kilav ben David. Kilav was the son of David. Interesting. So these 4 people never ever sinned, and yet they died because of the general klala on humanity. Soon we're going to see more questions here. The Kulhu Gemara. All 3 out of 4 is, there's no source in the Torah, it's a Gemara. It's an accepted teaching from time immemorial. Yeah, from Moshe Rabbeinu, we have this Messiah tradition that these 3 out of 4 are complete tzaddikim. Lebar, except for Yishai of David. Yishai, the father of David, the Mefarish Beikro. Yeah, there is a Mefurish pasuk that tells us that Yishai was a tzaddik. It's not very Mefurish, it's hinting to the fact that Yishai was a complete tzaddik. Dichtiv, what does it say? It says, Ve'es Amosa, there was a person, a general, a fighter, a warrior, called Amosa, Sam of Shalom, who rebelled against David. He made changes in the army, so he placed Amosa Tachas Yoav Saratzova. He placed Amosa to be instead of Yoav as the general. The Amosa, who's this new guy in the army? Amosa is Ben Ish, is the son of a man Ushmo Yitra HaYisraeli. He was the son of Yitra Israeli. Asher Boel Abigail, that married Abigail. Who is Abigail? Now let's start focusing more. Bas Nochosh. Abigail was the daughter of Nochosh. Okay, maybe her father had an interesting name, maybe like snakes. Achos Tzruya and Yoav. Yeah, Abigail was the sister of another woman called Tzruya. And Tzruya was the father of Yoav ben Tzruya. He was the original army guy. Correct the Gemara, wait a second. The Chibas Nochosh Avoy was the name of Abigail and Tzruya. Their father's name was Nochosh? No. Balobas Yishai Avoy. Yeah, Abigail and Tzruya were the daughters of Yishai. Don't get me wrong. There were 2 Abigails, David's sister and David's wife. He didn't marry a sister. Abigail, the sister, and Abigail, 2 sisters-in-law with the same name. So that Abigail, her father was Yishai, Dichtiv, Vach Yoseim Tzruya v'Abigail. When it talks about David and his brothers, it says their sisters are Tzruya and Abigail. So the father of Tzruya and Abigail was Yishai. Why do you call him Nochosh? Ela, why is it called Nochosh? Very interesting limud. Bas mi shemes be'et yeshel Nochosh. She's the daughter of the one who died because of the Nochosh. The only reason he died, that's an illusion, that he died because of the Eitzah of the Nochosh. So 1 second. So before we get to why that is a problem for Rav Ami, Let's look at Tosfos. Arba Meisu Beita Shel Noach is a very short Tosfos on top of the page. Frek Tosfos v'adechtiv ki odam ein tzadik bo'etz, and it says asher yaseh tov v'lo yechto. There's no righteous person in the land that would only do good and never sin. And here we see there are 4 people who did sin, who never sinned. And the pasuk says we all have our flaws. And so Tosfos beroi bnei odam koma. That's most people. 99.99999 of humanity, yes. But there are those 4 exceptions to the rule that they never sinned. I saw another beautiful pshat, but the Rosh Hashiva of Gates of Gurvitz, he said, I think he quoted earlier sources, Ein Tzadik Ba'aretz is a person who's involved with the Aretz. A person who, in Ben Adam Lamokoim, it's theoretically shaykh never to sin. You always have your tefillin 100%, your tzitzis 100%, your mezuzah 100%, lulav, matzah, but not to hurt other people's feelings is impossible because you're involved with people. And somebody would misinterpret you. Those 4 people, they were quiet people. They were not ba'oretz. They're not involved in yonim with all these 4 people. They're not central people in the Torah, not Moshe, Aaron, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. They had less dealings with other people. That's why they managed never to hurt anyone's feelings because they were like quiet in the corner, as opposed to let's say Moshe and Aaron, according to one opinion. Now let's see the attack on Avami. Let's see how the Gemara builds up the question on Avami's statement. Money, meaning, who is the author of this brisa? Ile matana de malocha ashores. If it's the Tana that in the top of the page that says the malocha ashores told Hashem, why did you kill Moshe and Aaron? And he said, yeah, Moshe and Aaron are perfect, never sinned. But that's the way it is. If so, Vayika Moshe v'Aaron. The first brisa says Moshe v'Aaron also never sinned or never sinned enough. So then you have 6 people. Right? You have 6 people who died because that's the way it is, not because of their sins. So 4 plus 2. So the brisa is wrong. It's not only these 4. El alav must be that who is this brisa following? The other Tana. Rab Shimon ben Elazar. It's Rab Shimon ben Elazar. That's the one who, right? Who Rab Shimon ben Elazar is the author of the brisa. Bishma mino, and it sounds like comes out that yesh misa b'loy chet v'yesh yison b'loy avon. It comes out really that what really these 4 people, if you follow the opinion that Moshe and Aaron did sin, and those 4, they're the only ones who didn't. And if they didn't sin, and they still died. So you see that there is death without sin. They didn't sin ever, didn't sin enough, and they died. Stam, because that's a gzera. So death is not because of your sins individually, it's because you're a human being. Tiyufta Ravami, Tiyufta. Ravami remains difficult. We managed to pose a question of Ravami that he has no answer to. In other words, it sounds more like that death is really something that was decreed upon human beings, and it's not necessarily something personal because of one person's sins. So it seems against Ravami at the end of the day. Now let's continue to the sins of the fathers. Before we continue, I want to give a nice little idea that I heard B'Shem Magichir when I was very young. Rav Fredman, Magichir brought down an interesting idea. There's the big yesod by the Nefesh HaChaim that every small action of a Jew in this world has a lot of ashpo in the upper world, right? Or even your thoughts. And the greater the person, the more that the influence in Alomas Elyonim is stronger, right? The Goyim have much, much less, if at all, right? So now we have to understand, many times the Torah says, L'ch'oyer, terrible things about tzaddikim. He went and he lied with his father's wife. Are you serious? Even today, people don't do that. So according to those opinions who say he didn't really do it, he did something else, which is much lighter. But in Shamayim, because he's such a tzaddik, in Shamayim, when he does that, it's considered as if a regular guy would have been with a mother. Understand? In other words, the effect is so great, so strong, that although he didn't do it, but the result up there in the scoreboard in Shamayim is really very, very strong. Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar B'Yonason. Oh, he came just in time. We are in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7th wide line. Yeah, Nun Hey Omud Beis. אמר שמואל בר נחמני בשתי נקודות כמה שורות רחבות. אמר שמואל בר נחמני אמר ביונסון כל אומר ראובן חוטו אינו לא טועה. Whoever said the Reuven sinned is just making a mistake. Now, what does mean he never? Doesn't mean he never sinned because he's not one of the 4. But Reuven basically never really had relations with Bilhah. Bilhah was his father's wife. Don't think that the shot of the pasuk is real, but rather Reuven never really had relations with his father's concubine or father's actually wife. Shenema, it says, Vayu bnei Yaakov, Shneim also, it says right there and then, after the story with Reuven, it says that the children of Yaakov were 12. What's a chiddush? Every child knows that. The Torah already told us that. It's coming to tell me, Belamed shekulan shkulim ke'achas. It's coming to tell me that even after the sin, whatever the sin was, really they're all the same, they're all tzaddikim. Tzaddikim, if he was with his father's wife, he's not a tzaddik. Ela, mani mekayem. So how do you explain the pasuk? Vayishka v'sbila pilegish oviv. How it says he lied, excuse my language, he slept with Bila, his father's Pelegish, father's second wife, a concubine. What's that? Melamed, it's coming to tell me, Shebil bel matzoy shel oviv. Yeah? In other words, he was mebalbel, he changed his father's bed. In other words, not changed the linen. In other words, he moved his father's bed from the tent of Bila to the tent of Leah, as we're going to explain later. The Torah considers it as if he had relations with her. In other words, as I told you before, such a tzaddik like Reuven, to start interfering with your father's, intimate life, and by Yaakov it was all very, very holy, and the Shekhinah was involved, you're starting to meddle with other people's privacy, that for such a tzaddik is considered as if you mamish have relations with her. Yeah, that machshava, it's as if, you're making, changing this and that. You should be with her tonight, Yeah, it's none of your business. No, I'm not saying it. The Gemara says that. I'm not saying this, but that shouldn't be his business. It's as if he was sheichev with her. Ad kidei kach. What was the story behind that? We're going to explain now. Tanya, Rab Shimon ben Ozo, another brayso on the same idea. Rab Shimon ben Ozo says, "Mutzal oisoi tzadik me oisoi ovoin." This tzaddik was saved from that sin. Right? In other words, he never really, lied with Bilhah. The deed never came to him. How do we know that? For a different reason. Right? You know, the Bnei Yisrael came to Eretz Yisrael, right? There were 6 Shvatim on Har Eval and 6 Shvatim on Har Grizim. And the 6 Shvatim on Har Eval, they received all the klalos. Right? So Reuven was one of the people, one of the Shvatim standing on Har Eval, listening to the Oru, to the Klolos. The Loimar, they said, Oru shoichev im eshes oviv. One of the Arurim, one of the curses of the accursed person is one who lies with his father's wife. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wouldn't have paused Reuven in a place that would remind him of his father's sin. Like it says, when somebody is choshud in a certain Avera, you don't give him the aliyah of that Avera. Let's say you think somebody's a shvindler, is a liar, you don't give him the aliyah that talks about not lying. You don't, try and, push it in. You don't try to, shtoch him. So it doesn't make sense. Reuven would have to get the message if that was really the sin. Ella, again comes the same question. Mani mekayim v'yishka v'zbila pelegish oviv. Oh, what does it mean really that lichoira he lied with Bila the Pilegesh? Oh, now we're going to go into the details. What was the real business there? Elboin imoy tova. He demanded his mother's insult, which means, he was exacting Yaakov. He was basically demanding of Yaakov that he's insulting his mother, Bilhah. Reuven already before was always taking care of his mother, but the Dudoim. Right? Reuven was a Bechor, he always took care of his mother very much. Like a Bechor was the firstborn, he's always very, responsible. So he was caring a lot about his mother. So what? What does that have to do with anything? Omar, he said, Im achois imi oisot imi, if my mother's sorrow, my mother's co-wife, who was that? Rochel, if she was tzorah imi, which means, let me explain. As long as Rochel and Leah were both alive, Yaakov's bed was on a regular basis. Yaakov's bed was mostly by Rochel. His main living was with Rochel. She was the main wife. And with that, Reuven was, okay, what can he do? Rochel and Leah are both sisters. In the hierarchy, they're both more or less the same. So, okay, he loves my aunt more than he loves my mother. I can live with that. But then Rochel died. When Rochel died, what did Yaakov do? he moved his bed to the tent of Bilhah, to the Shifcha, to the maidservant of Rachel. That's already insulting for Leah, right? Because Leah was more than Bilhah. And that's exactly what Reuven's taina, which from his perspective was right. So now Reuven is saying, Shifchas achos imi tetzol imi. Yeah, the Shifcha, the maidservant of my aunt, of my mother's sister, she should be so to my mother. She should be more important than my mother. No way. Omadu bilbeles matzo. So he changed the bed. He also took action. Actions speak louder than words. He didn't complain to Yaakov. He took Yaakov's bed and moved it where? He moved it like a kanos. He moved it back to Leah's tent, and Yaakov came, and it's not what Yaakov planned. Yaakov was Yaakov Avinu, he had his cheshbonis, and therefore, that was his sin, ke'ilu he lied with her. Acherim oimrim, others say, shtei matzois bilbel. When he actually moved the bed, it's as if he moved two beds, two matzois. Matzah is like where you lie on, the surface. Achas shel shchina v'achas shel oviv. Oy, oy, oy. He didn't just kivyochel messed up with Yaakov's bed, he kivyochel messed up with the Shechina's bed. As I'm going to explain soon, that's what it says, Oz chilalto yitzui olo. Yaakov is not saying you went up on my bed, he says you desecrated my bed. Desecrated? Since when is a man's bed holy? If you touch my bed and you move my stuff, I would say, what are you doing in my bed? But are you desecrating? The answer is yes. Explains Rashi two explanations. Yaakov Avinu always saw where's the Shechina. Yaakov Avinu had the bed in every tent of the four, and Yaakov Avinu, he was Yaakov Avinu. He wasn't a Chas v'Shalom, a regular man. And he saw the Shechina resting in a specific tent, and then he went there. So according to this, it's not even so simple that the bed was always by Bilhah. He saw that night, or those few nights, that the bed is by Bilhah. The Shechina is by Bilhah. When you move the bed, you moved Yaakov's bed together with the Shechina, Kivyochol. You're messing up, you're interfering with the aura of the Shechina. That's much worse. And that was his chait. And it's as if he had relations with her. The second shot of Rashi says Pashut, because before Beis HaMikdash, or even before the Mishkan, the Shechina was in the house of the Tzaddikim. Where's the Shechina? Well, Mishkan, Mikdash. When there's no Mishkan or Mikdash, the Shechina is in the house of a Tzaddik. That's where it is. Interesting. Maybe even today. And that's why when you mess up with the tzaddik, you mess up with the Shechina. However, let me surprise you. Now the Gemara is going to surprise us. Because everybody learned, either in kindergarten or when you go to yeshiva, whenever, everybody knows the version of the story, right? Reuven never sinned, and Reuven was okay. Elamai, he changed the beds. Now we're actually going to see some machlokes tanoim, and we're going to see 2/3 opinions. You see what I mean by 2 or 3. Machlokes tanoim. Tachaz kamaim al toita. He's telling him, in other words, Yaakov Avinu, all of a shalom, told Reuven at the end of his life, when he gave Reuven the final the rebuke, he told him, Pachaz kamaim al toita. Pachaz normally means what? Rushing, too rushed, too quick, too hasty. So you were as hasty as water, therefore al toisar. You're not going to have the double portion of a b'chol. I'm removing the b'choyer from you because you were too harsh and you were too quick. You were too hasty. Now, the word pachaz can be learned as Rosh Tevis, as initials, meaning, Ablezer oimer, pazta, chavta, zalta. Pazta, you were too quick. Chavta, you sinned. You have sinned like choiva, you really sinned. Zalta, you mezalzel, you became cheap. Believe it or not, says Rashi, according to Ablezer, he really sinned. Wow, he really had relations with her. They didn't teach you that in Gan, right? That's it. Not me either. It's okay. Rabbi Yeshua Oimer, Rabbi Yeshua says, Pasata, same idea. Pasata al dat. You stepped over, you trampled over the halacha. Chatata, you sinned. Zanisa, you were Zaina. You mezana, you really had relations with her. So these two opinions of Lezer and Yeshua say he really did the sin. Wow. Why? It's a good question, but he did. Rabban Gamliel Oimer, Pilalta, Chalta, Zochot Filosecha. You davened, you pilalta, you asked Hashem to actually be saved from the sin. Chalta is another lotion of tefillah to be saved from sin. Zochot Filosecha. your tefillah was shining through. In other words, according to Rabban Gamliel, you know what's the halacha? Really, not the halacha. You know what the story was? He almost sinned and he didn't, like Yosef. Yeah, you davened not to sin, you had a Yetzer Hara and you didn't. But maybe even that thought is like changing the bet, is like bad enough. Yeah, it's bad enough to even have that in mind, but he didn't really sin. He thought to sin, but he didn't. He held himself back by davening. Omar Rabban Gamliel, Adain tzrichin anu l'modoi. Even after what I say, I want to still get help from the opinion of Rabbi Lezer L'modoi. Oimer, hafoches hateva v'dorsho. You can learn the word pei, ches, zayin, pachas, the wrong way around, from back to front. Ziazata, hirtata, porcho chet mimcha. Ziazata means you basically were shaking. You were like, shaken. You were shaken from fear not to sin. Hirtata, you were, holding yourself back. Porcho chet mimcha. And then pei ches. The sin flew away from you. Very good. Which means, according to these two opinions, he almost sinned and he held himself back. He was a hero. That's a similar idea. Zayin ches pei. You remembered Oin Shel Dover. You didn't lose yourself. You remembered the terrible punishment of whoever comes and has relations with a relative, which says that he will never have a continuation. You made yourself sick over not sinning. Holding your yetzer back almost made you sick. You're such taiva. And then you removed yourself from the sin. So if we look at the whole picture, there are really three opinions. Opinion number one, Bila didn't interest him at all. Nothing to do with her. He wanted to, basically to be the judge and work justice. It's not fair what they're doing to my mother. I'm going to take the law into my hands. I'm moving the bed from Bila's tent into Leah's tent. That's my mother, Kibud Aim. That's number one. That was the wrong thing to do, as the Torah says, not me. And therefore what? Therefore it's considered as if he mamash had relations. Opinion number two, bad news, what we were never taught in school or in Gan or in Cheder. Yes, he had relations with her, and that was bad enough. Remember, that's also before Matan Torah. So give Reuven a chance, right? Before Matan Torah, all these arise were not clearly otter at all. No. They kept it me'atzmam, but they were not mechuyev. Thirdly, third opinion says he was almost there, and then he held himself back, and then he didn't do it, so that's why he didn't sin. Question, my turn to ask a question. Something that really bothered me, and I have an answer, which is my own chiddush. We can also say own chiddushim, not just me. I didn't see meforshim on this one. I mean, I've seen a little bit, but my question is as follows. Why do you call Reuven a sinner? Reuven almost sinned, right? And then he didn't, right? He held himself back. That reminds me of his younger brother, Yosef. Yosef Tzaddik has been, wow. He's been getting generation after generation, and rightfully so. Compliments all the time. Yosef Tzaddik, Veimain, the whole videos of Veimain is all about that, right? You have to be like Yosef Tzaddik and all this. What a tzaddik, he didn't sin. Reuven, why don't you call Reuven a tzaddik, but we call him a sinner? Isn't the same? So I have two answers. First of all, Yosef, she drove him crazy to sin with her. She drove him nuts, and Bila, I assume, didn't. Bila was a kedosha, so she didn't, right? Secondly, it's the environment. Reuven was in a frum environment. He was by Yaakov Avinu, there was Bes Medrash. Why are you sinning? Why is your mind moving to that direction? Yosef was in San Francisco, time Los Angeles, time London. Yosef was a very tumadika place, right? It was in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Miami, all together. That was Mitzrayim. That's common enough, no? That's not so holy. It's Kodesh, right? And therefore, Yosef was in such a dire place with no hadrocha, no yeshiva, no father. A boy like that, of course he would sin. And he held himself back. That's a very big darga. Mashenk and Reuven was in a good sviva. Go learn the Sefer. Why are you looking at your father's wife, right? And Mimela, I think that's why Yosef is a tzaddik and Reuven is a sinner, lefi the Torah, although the ma'ases of itself is the same, but the surroundings and the background is very different. What are you saying, Jason?
What about a difference between one's?
Weiter, I like your pshat. Weiter, Reuven, okay. Now we have more people, more sinners, or maybe not sinners, in the Tanakh. Now we're going to meet a whole new group of people. Reuven, Bnei Eli, Bnei Shmuel, David, V'Shlomo, V'Yishayahu, Siman. All these people will be examined, some today, some tomorrow, Bezras Hashem. Reuven, we just discussed already. Bnei Eli are coming up now. The sons of Shmuel, David, Shlomo, Yishayahu. Let's see. The upcoming people, the Choshev people coming are Bnei Eli. Who are Bnei Eli? Let's just give a background. In the times of Shmuel Novi, yeah, what happened then? The Mishkan was in Shiloh, and who was the Kohen Gadol then? A very, very choshev person, a Novi called Eli with an Ain, and his children were Chofni and Pinchas. Chofni and Pinchas, when you read the Novi, were not exactly amazing people. It says there were two Averis. One of them is not discussed right now. One of the Averis was they were Sheichev, they lied with the women who came to the Mishkan. Nice. Eshet Ish, time and again, many of them. Yeah. So what's going on here? Was that so? Let's see. Whoever says that the children of Eli sinned kepshutoi as a simple pshat of being with the Eshet Ish, again, it's a mistake. Shenema, why? It says over there, the Sham Shnei Bnei Eli, the two sons of Eli were there in Shiloh. Chofni uPinchas. Remember the names? Chofni and Pinchas were the two sons. Kohanim LaHashem. Oh, they are both called Kohanim LaHashem. And now Chofni and Pinchas are mentioned together as a Hekesh. Savo lo kirav. So what is it? So they didn't sin. I'll tell you why. Savo lo kirav. The Omar Rav, says Rav Pinchas. The Omar Rav, Pinchas lo ichoto. We're going to soon prove that Pinchas himself did not sin. He definitely didn't sin ad kedei kach to Chalila be with an Eshet Ish. And since Pinchas, as we'll see later, didn't actually have relations with Eshet Ish, so too, Makish Chofni la Pinchas, Chofni is also compared to Pinchas. Ma Pinchas lo ichoto, av Chofni lo ichoto. Yeah, neither Pinchas nor Chofni were not really choite. Just like Pinchas will prove later, is a tzaddik enough not to be choite so much, so too Chofni. Which begs the question, excuse me, Elamani Mekayim Asher Yishkabu Nesanoshim, but it says Yishkabu Nesanoshim. It says they slept, excuse my language, they slept with the women, with an Eshet Ish. All the women came to the Shiloh. That's a lot of women. Answers the Beraisa, Mitoich Sheshoes Kinehen, which means women many times have to bring korban more than men. Meaning, what's a ken? She has to bring two birds, yeah, Toirim or Bnei Yoina, for what? After birth. One for Chatas, one for Oila. After she gave birth, either the 40th day after male or 80 days after female, she has to go to the Mishkan. People were bringing korbanos to the Mishkan, and they were mashim eskineim, bureaucracy. They on purpose kept them there for a long time, and they didn't have relations with them, but they kept the women there for a long time. The women would wait day after day, and Chofni and Pinchas were, Bituach Leumi style. We'll deal with your case tomorrow. And what happened then? The husband stayed home. Now, says Rashi, what was the sin? Chofni and Pinchas, normally, if a Kohen behaves like a mensch, a woman can leave the korban there, yeah, and the Kohen will deal with it, and she doesn't have to be there. She's meshalech someone else to be on top of the korban. Chofni and Pinchas were not reliable. They didn't trust them to really do the job. So they had to wait until Mr. Chofni and Pinchas finished the coffee break and the strike and whatever, and then they will do their kinim, and they did it on purpose. And that, why is that like having relations? Because the lohol chutz ba'alein. Meanwhile, the husband is waiting at home, and they basically caused the men and women to be separate. Yeah, the woman would stay in Shiloh, the husband is in Haifa, Bnei Brak, Yerushalayim, wherever he is, and the woman is not with him. They're mevatel them from Pira V'Rivya, mevatel them from being with the husband. Because again, they interfered with their intimacy life by preventing them from being with the husband. Mainly, it's considered as if they were shoichev with the women. So they did a terrible avera, but it wasn't really physically the same way. Oh, and that's why Pinchas is not called a choite, meaning he's not that much of a choite. It's not mamish, a guy who had Eshet Ish. Now, Gufa, how do you know that Pinchas was not a real sinner? Gufa, now we'll prove that point itself. Amar Rav, says Rav, Pinchas lo ichoto. Pinchas never really sinned in Eshet Ish. Shenema, it says, It says when it talks about the genealogy of different Kohanim, yeah, it says Achia ben Achituv. There was a man called Achia ben Achituv, Achi Ikavod, the brother of a man called Ikavod. Ben, listen to this. Who is Achia the Kohen meyuchas to? Who is he alleged to? Who is his yichus? Ben Pinchas, ben Eli Kohen. Oh, Kohen Hashem. Look, Pinchas is mentioned as a forefather of a respectable Kohen mentioned in the Navi. Efshar chet bo yoda because of meyachsoi. You think he sinned? He did sin, but you think he sinned Eshet Ish times 100, and the Kosev gives him yichus? It says in the pasuk mefurash, as I told you before, Yachis Hashem leish asher yasena er ve'oino ve'oine ve'hole Yaakov u'megish mincha Hashem tzvokos. It says whoever sins with a woman, whoever has that kind of relations, he will not have good children. B'chlal, he will not have heir ve'oine. I'm going to explain what that means from Yaakov, and if he's a kohen, he will not have descendants kohanim. You sinned in that avera to do with prurvu. You will not be zoiche to have a gita kinderlach, children who serve Hashem. So, and the pasuk, now the Gemara explains the pasuk. In Israel, who if he's a Israel, lo yelo er b'chachomim v'lo oine b'talmidim. Says Rashi, what's er? He's not going to have a descendant, let's say a grandson or so, that he's er. What's er? Awake. He's not going to have somebody, says Rashi, chorif lehovin or lehoiros. He's not going to have a grandson, Talmid Chacham, who's alive in learning, who knows how to learn and how to be moira halacha. Im kohen hu lo yelo ben megish mincha. And if he's a kohen, he's not going to have a son, a grandson who will serve mincha. El alav shma mina, pinchas lo yichoto. Oh, so now, according to Rav, by the way, I'm going to tell you now to avoid confusion. Rav is not exactly like the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel, of Rabbi Yonason. Why? Rabbi Yonason said Rav never sinned. Pinchas never sinned, right? And so did Chofni. They're together. They didn't sin big time with an Eshet Ish. They sinned by being bureaucratic and leaving the women there. Now Rav holds that Pinchas did not sin. That Pinchas did not sin at all. He was 100% fine. He did everything right. And Chofni really sinned, big time with women. Yeah, just complete dichotomy, as you're going to see proven now. Therefore, the Gemara asks the question, El ha'dichtiv asher yishkevun. It says they slept. Not only he slept, Chofni, also Pinchas. How do you explain that? You're saying Pinchas was good. And says the Gemara, yishkevan ksiv. Yeah, the way it's written is yishachvan. He slept with them. It's only Chofni, the bad boy. I baksiv al bonai. It says no, says Eli approached them and says, Albonai, no, my children. He heard. People told him, excuse me, Rabbi Eli, look what your children are doing. And then he begged them to stop. And he says, Albonai, please, no, I'm rebuking you, my children. There's bad rumor going about you. Oh, it says, Bonai, my two children. If the only sinner was Chofni, what did he want from Pinchas? It says Bni, Bonai, Bni. If there's no Nikud, it could mean Bni, my son, my one son. However, the Gemara rejects it and says, Vaksiv ma'avirim. It says they would pass, which means to do with the chait. No, it was only him, only one man. Chofni was a sinner, ma'avir loshen yochid. Now comes the final answer. I vaksiv b'nei Belial. Yeah, you can't answer. B'nei Belial in singular should be ben Belial. It says there were b'nei Belial, there were a shoim, people who know Yiras Shamayim. What are you going to say? If you're telling me that the only sinner was Chofni and Pinchas was a tzaddik, what does it say? They were b'nei Belial. They were sons with no yoke, no Yiras Shamayim. Now comes the punchline to do with our sugya. Mitoch shohel al Pinchas limchois lechofni veloy micha. Pinchas should have told Chofni off. Pinchas should have told him, you're having relations with women, are you nuts? With Eshet Ish, stop it right now. And he didn't. Therefore, the Torah considers it as if himself sinned, as we said before. If you see your friend, your brother doing something wrong, and you don't stop it, you remain silent, you are partner in crime. So lemaskono, the story of Chofni and Pinchas, two opinions. Either since we know that Pinchas did not sin, definitely not all the way, Therefore, and Pinchas is like Chofni. None of them really sinned. They were not managing the Mishkan so well, and it caused the women to be separate from the husband. That was bad enough. Like as if they were with them lying. Second shot says no, that Pinchas didn't sin at all. Tadik Gomer, not exactly. Because Chofni sinned big time, and Pinchas never told him off. He maybe accepted him. Maybe he went to a new age mechanech and he told him, just accept your brother the way he is, and all this nice babble talk of the modern world. I don't know why. I guess not. I guess he had higher reasons than that, but he was punished. He was considered to be as Ben Belial as his brother. He did have continuation because he didn't sin with women. So he had children. He had good children. He was a big tzaddik, but because he did not rebuke his brother to a certain level, he was considered as if he was partner in crime, and that's his Bnei Belial. Of course, these are very, very holy, high people. We don't understand their maisim. We are living, miles away from them in Ruchnias. That, of course, we always have to know. And tomorrow we're going to talk about the sons of Shmuel. Thank you, Hatzlacha Bracha. May we only know Hatzlachas and no Averas, only mitzvahs. And may we have long life. Nachosh, no Nachosh. All is good. Bezos Hashem. Thank you for coming. Hatzlacha Bracha.